I'm gonna be honest with you guys, writing this review for Future Connected was hard. It was hard because it really didn't leave much of an impression on me. I don't think there was much that stood out that I could call formative or groundbreaking in my 10 hours of total playtime, and honestly, I think that's okay. It's okay because this epilogue doesn't feel like it's trying to be a fully fleshed out and impactful experience. It feels like a teaser, perhaps a bridge of sorts, and it feels like a blend of the old and the new. Perhaps it was my already tampered expectations, or perhaps it was how little Monolith Soft opted to show us before this epilogue's release. But it left my initial experience with Future Connected with it feeling like a natural extension of the nearly 80-hour journey I had with Xenoblade Definitive Edition, and as a result, it sort of felt like it blended in a little too well. Ultimately, Xenoblade's Future Connected epilogue is pretty decent, and I'll explain to you why. First, we should talk about the thing that takes the forefront of this experience, the world. As many of you know, the area you explore in this epilogue is a once cut piece of content from the original game, the Bionis Shoulder. Exploring the shoulder felt seamless, like they ripped out a part of a decade-old game and added it here, which is exactly what they did. The design of this area maintains the original's simple yet sandbox area design that feels easy to navigate, yet is sprawling and interconnected all at once. The various enemies that had once been exclusive to certain biomes in the original game are a bit odd to see at first, but they really only exist to help give some variety in gameplay, so I'll let it slide. The thing that this epilogue does the best is develop and present us its characters. Shulk feels like he's just the same goofy, kind-hearted, and introspective protagonist that we knew and loved from the original. He retains all of his core character traits, and the way he's written makes him feel like he's just pulled straight out of 2010.
All because we wanted to protect the world. And we made that dream a reality. We brought down Zanza.
Overcoming our prejudice gave us strength in unity, because we shared a goal.
Radzum's folk, the companions, and us as well. We all share the same goal.
Nene and Kino are adorable, and I love how they represent the two main aspects of Ricky's personality. Nene has the parental attitude and Kino has his hubris. I love their innocent charm and the established bond that they share. I also love how they give us stories of Ricky as well, helping develop his character off screen. With how cute, innocent, and childlike they were, these two honestly became some of my favorite Nopon in the series.
Kino may be better to explain. We're just on a little strolly stroll when we suddenly hear voices. Now, Kino. Nene watched Kino with eyes of Rogel. Kino, follow Mr. Shulk from behind and do some sneak peekings. Nana, Sister Pon followed Kino and sneak peek on too. Meh.
So you stowed away like I thought. But what for?
Kino always look up to Dedapon, want to become mighty Heropon too.
I'm certain Ricky would be most proud. But how did that lead to you boarding our vessel?
He see opportunity to help people who in trouble. That way can become friends with people everywhere. Mighty Heropon make friends with every toe step. Or so Dedapon say, at least.
I see. That does explain things.
Many, many sorries. It's not fault of Sister Pom. Please not scold Nene. Fault is of Kino only. Kino? Sincere sorries. Kino wanted to repay debt. Dad upon and Mom upon take Kino in when Kino all alone.
You were alone?
Is truth. One day, out of blue, Dad upon bring Kino home. Said, here is Brother Pon. That day, nobody make comment. Everyone except Kino. Kino more happy than could say. That why. That way want to become hero Pon and repay debt to family. Kino really sorry.
Of course, these characters aren't the star of the show here. The real main player is Melia, and I think she goes through the most development and depth in this story easily. She comes to grips with her newfound leadership role, starting off the story by hiding from it and not telling any of the refugees of her status, and ends the story with her embracing it. She begins to develop a budding familial relationship with her stepsister Tyrea, who also progresses and learns to harbor a sense of empathy toward her sister. The one place I feel like Melia falters is in Jenna Coleman's voice acting. I would say that she seems really lethargic and tired, like she's unable to really get herself into the role. I've heard many use the excuse that the last decade has been taking a toll on her ability to voice her, but I don't believe that to be the case. Her voice doesn't seem deeper, it only really seems quieter and directionless. Despite this, it really doesn't do much to sway me one way or the other. I don't think her voice acting's terrible, but it did take some time getting used to. Teelan is a character who serves a nice role of showing us how much Tyrea has grown by becoming a sister-like figure to him. But he really doesn't contribute much, nor does he really have a standout personality in my opinion. The same could be said for everyone else that you come across in this epilogue. Characters like Radzim and Galgar really serve little purpose in this story, but their inclusion could be pointing towards something that I think will contribute to the future of the series. The gist of me saying this is, I don't think this is the last we will see of these characters. This story is definitely created in the service of Melia and her character, and it shows. Whether it's her growing relationship with Tyrea or her attempts to connect with the people that she'll soon rule over, her character development is thoroughly combed through in this experience.
When in reality, I'm standing here talking with you. So then, I think that leaves us some room for friendship. Doesn't it?
You speak just like those Homs you travelled with.
I take that as a compliment, actually. But it's as you say. It's yet another thing I've learnt from them.
Next, we'll move on to the combat. Now, there are some strange decisions made in this combat system here, like they really didn't think it through fully when they initially created it. Firstly, without the use of Future Sight, the lack of Mechon, and the limited team variety, many of Shulk's Monado arts are just useless. I don't understand why Buster isn't Future connected since there's no Mechon to hit it with. Enchant really doesn't make sense either. On top of this, things like Shield and Speed lose utility without any sort of premonition or telegraph of what move an enemy will throw at you next. They probably should have just been better served to include new Monado arts if they were just going to make it so that most of these old ones that we had were virtually obsolete in this story. The removal of chain attacks is probably the biggest change in this combat system, and the main thing it does is get rid of topple locking, since you now aren't guaranteed to break or topple a monster with any hit, and you have less frequency of the arts that allow you to topple an enemy in general. The chain attacks have been replaced with the newly implemented Pawn Spectres, who really only exist to deal massive damage to an enemy or a group of enemies once your party gauge is full. Pawn Spectres are useful but rarely serve any major tactical purpose, whereas in the base game I'd often just save my party gauge and use it in a strategic manner. I felt little desire to save my party gauge when it came to the Pawn Spectres though. Why would I wait to topple an enemy when they have a move that insta-dazes them? Why would I wait to use Party Meter to revive a teammate when they can restore everyone's health and remove debuffs? I often just use them gung-ho without thinking much, and in some regards, it felt like a step back from what the base game intended. Ultimately, it felt as though Monolith Soft didn't do enough properly to mesh these new mechanics with the old ones in order to make it really feel like a justifiable alternative. The limited number of arts, gems, and equipment only serve to limit gameplay, and so do the Pawn Specters. And the lack of visions really limit the availability and use of a lot of specific arts and tactics, and really forces you to play a specific way. If these mechanics were implemented with some sort of substitute for experimentation, perhaps it would have felt better. But at the end of the day, I just kind of felt underwhelmed by Future Connected's combat. It seems like they were just limiting things just because they could and trying to fix things that weren't broken. In terms of a new mechanic that I love, the quiet moments were all enjoyable and set the stage for our characters to interact and bond with one another. All of them are voiced, which helped me get into the moments, and ones like the two between Tyrea and Melia, or the ones with Shulk and Melia, set me into a nostalgic trip that I was enthralled with. Some of them were a bit strange and didn't really feel necessary, like they were treading familiar ground.
It's not to intimidate Kino.
You wish to be a hero pawn, yes? If that was enough to startle you, you've got a long way to go.
But overall, they were a much welcome inclusion. Now let's go into the thing that most of you have probably been waiting for. The plot is really nothing special. It's likely the source of disappointment for many. Very little of note actually happens in this story. No twists, no major revelations or set-piece moments. The group goes out to find Alchemoth, encounters the Fog King, and beats it. It's all fairly straightforward and goes by extremely quickly with very little build-up, tension, or foreshadowing to really be seen. What this story seems to be attempting, from my eyes, is something more nuanced. It actually seems like it's less of a full-fledged adventure and more of a teaser of what's to come. Several events take place, and words are spoken that ultimately lead nowhere, or have very little payoff. Melia is set up to become a ruler in a position of power, but very little is really done with it. Galgar's involvement in the story and his hatred of purebred High-Entia has no involvement in the main story whatsoever. The budding conflict between the Machina and the High-Entia is barely even touched upon, despite being mentioned several times in the story. But this is okay, because these events do not seem like they are meant to serve the purpose of this one narrative, but are instead a seed to be planted for whatever may lie in the future of the Xenoblade series. I know that's a bold prediction to make, but I still hold firm that this epilogue is not only a closing chapter for Melia, but a teaser for what's to come. A future Xenoblade title set in the same world? Sign me up.
Onwards to Alchemoth.
Tired of Kino's feet. Big sis can get cuddle. Meh, but Nene tied too. Kino, you give cuddle first.
Why don't I cuddle with you both?
Meh, much more better. Much more better.